Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday, March 20th, North Middlesex Council meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. At the present time, we are still awaiting Councillor Cornelison. Disclosure of pecuniary interests, if anyone has any, please forward them through to the clerk. Minutes of the previous meeting from March the 6th. Any questions, errors, or omissions, or business arising from that? Seeing none, motion. Councillor Daigle, Councillor Irwin, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. First item of business delegation, and we welcome Inspector Ross Stewart forward to do a report. Thanks for coming, Ross.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to once again come before North Middlesex Council and for this evening have the opportunity to provide you with a summary for OPP policing within the municipality during the 2023 fiscal or calendar year, I should say. There's a number of items that I'd like to touch on tonight, and I know that we have the report for you to view. I want to start off with the summary in relation to total calls for service for 2023. And if you look on the report, I would highlight the difference in the calls for service between 2022 and 2023. It is quite a notable increase, almost a 10% increase, in fact. And I think it's important for council and the community to understand why that's happened. At the end of 2022, the OPP provincially switched to a digital system for our ticketing for provincial offense notices. We went away from the traditional handwritten ticket that an officer would write in the car to an electronically generated one within the car. And essentially what happens now is because it's electronically generated, it's in essence creating an occurrence for every traffic stop that we do. So when we look at what and I'll get into it in a moment, but when we look at the number of e-tickets that were issued within the municipality over the course of 2023, it's a little bit over 600. That actually accounts for the increase in the calls for service numbers and actually represents what would otherwise be a decline in calls for service. This is all important because under the billing model, of course, there is a component of the formula that charges a fee back to the municipality based on calls for service. And what I wanted to do is reassure council that in this particular case, because it is in relation to proactive enforcement, this is actually covered under the base service cost of the fund or of the expense. So as a result, it actually has no impact whatsoever on your bill. It would actually represent probably a decrease over the 4-year average because the calls for service have in essence dropped for the ones that are outside of your base service expectations. So I felt that that was an important point to clarify from the outset. From the standpoint of violent crime, I have provided council with a summary here of total violent crime within North Middlesex over 2023. You will see that there is a 10% increase in these types of calls. And that can be everything from a homicide, which we would consider to be the most egregious. Thankfully, none during the 2023 year. All the way down to assaults, robbery, as well as other types of crimes against a person, for example, a harassment type call. And you will see that in particular, we have noted a decrease in sexual assaults between 2022 and 2023. But we have seen quite an increase when it comes to other crimes against a person. And in reviewing those in preparation for tonight's meeting, I can tell you that almost without exception, those are domestic related incidents that are accounting for that increase. As we move on to property crime, I certainly know within North Middlesex, as with throughout the county, property crime is arguably one of the most important elements for the good folks within the community, and also one of the main focuses for us as police. And I'm very happy to say that we've got good news to share when we look at the property crime related numbers for North Middlesex between 2022 and 2023. We've seen quite a notable decrease in the number of break and enters in the community, an almost 62% decrease, which is excellent. Our theft overs are down 50%. Theft over refers to something that's in value of $5,000 or more. And generally speaking, those will refer to either large break-ins where a lot of tools are taken or stolen vehicles. So to see those decreases, given the concern you're seeing provincially when it relates to stolen vehicles, I see that as a real positive. That's not to suggest that 11 of those instances over the years still good enough, but it's an increase and it's an improvement. So, and then when you look at theft under, so under 5,000, as well as having stolen goods, notable decreases there. What I will draw attention to is what we do see, though, is quite an increase in relation to frauds. And I believe that I've spoke about this in the past. This is something that we see throughout the county, frankly, around the province, regardless of the jurisdiction. We are seeing more and more instances of frauds where grandparent scams, for example, the CRA scam that probably everybody's very familiar with. We continue to see these types of things happening. And one of the ways in which we're trying to manage this is through public education and having those information sessions with folks to educate them as to what to do when they're faced with these types of phone calls or at times people that show up on your doorstep. When it relates to things like grandparent scams, it's very concerning because older folks are potentially more vulnerable to be defrauded in these situations. And when they receive a phone call saying a loved one, a grandson, or someone is in jail, that's obviously something that most grandparents are going to act upon right away. So what I would say to council, but anyone that's listening as well, is to if you receive those types of calls, please don't react to them. Please do not take any action and send any money. I would ask that you call the non-emergency OPP number and notify us right away. What I can reassure everybody of is that the police will never call you looking for money to release a loved one. That's not the way that the system works. So if you receive that phone call, you can identify that as a fraud right away and just simply hang up, and please let us know. I would like to speak about drug crime for a moment as well. You'll see that in 2023, there was one drug trafficking investigation that took place within the community itself. I can tell you that that is an investigation that has gone on for months and months and actually came to fruition in the form of a search warrant on the 4th of March here in Park Hill on William Street, the 7th of March. You may have noticed, you may have heard, we had quite a presence on that street for the better part of a day. That's an investigation that was quite time consuming and took a long time to get to the point of having a warrant to execute. And I can tell you that it was very successful. It is obviously before the court, so I won't go into the details, but what I will tell you is that 2 people are under arrest facing multiple trafficking charges. So I'm pleased to report that even though we had one drug trafficking investigation that was started in 2023, we have made arrests and addressed that problem at this time. When it comes to both property and drug-related crime, the focus of those investigations is really run by our community street crime unit. These are plainclothes officers that specialize in both property and drug-related crime. And in fact, it's those officers that are responsible for the warrant back on the 7th of March. It is important to share what that unit's been doing across the county throughout 2023 and not just within North Middlesex, because I can tell you that people that commit property crime, drug-related crime, Although they may commit it within North Middlesex, they are mobile. They will move throughout the county and they'll move throughout multiple counties. And so when our street crime is engaged in activity relating to drug and property crime throughout the county, it definitely has an impact on public safety within each of the municipalities, including North Middlesex. So in 2023, our street crime unit throughout the county was involved in 136 different investigations, which resulted in 93 separate search warrants being executed, 119 persons being charged for just under 1,000 criminal charges being laid, with tens of thousands of dollars in drugs and property recovered, so as well as numerous weapons. So a lot of good work being done by our street crime unit, and the credit to them for us seeing the property crime numbers continuing to drop. I'd like to speak briefly about some of the traffic-related enforcement that has gone on in 2023. Some very positive news when it comes to our enforcement numbers within the municipality itself. In 2022, our officers laid 415 provincial offense notices within North Middlesex. In 2023, they laid 610, which is an increase of 47%, which is very significant. That's really good news. Enforcement is not obviously the only solution to poor driving behavior, but it most certainly is a component of it. Our proactive rides have increased from 71 in 2022 to 126 in 2023 for a 77% increase. And again, that's specific to North Middlesex. What I can tell you is that those numbers are consistent throughout the county, where we've seen those very large increases. I'm not really sure how to account for those increases other than the fact that our officers are just very engaged. I don't like taking the credit for anything, but I think that when I arrived a year ago, I made it very clear that traffic enforcement and traffic safety is a priority for me. So I give a lot of credit to all of our uniform members for hearing me and for taking my concerns and sort of adopting them into their day-to-day routine. So I hope to continue to see those numbers increase over the course of next calendar year, and I certainly anticipate that it will. Likewise, though, when we're out stopping more cars and we're doing more ride, I would anticipate that we would see our impaired driving numbers increase because the unfortunate reality is that impaired drivers are on the road every day. But what we've actually seen is a notable decrease between 2022 and 2023, where in North Middlesex in 22, we arrested 16 impaired drivers. We only arrested 9 in 2023, despite increased enforcement, increased traffic stops, increased ride. So that's good news for sure. What I will tell you is across the counties, our impaired driving numbers are up, and they're up dramatically. And that is consistent across the province within the OPP as well as our municipal partners. So good news for North Middlesex, but the trend provincially continues to be very concerning in relation to impaired driving. As it relates to motor vehicle collisions, we did see a little bit of an increase between 2022 and 2023. A total of 112 collisions this past calendar year, including 1 fatality, which is down from 2 the previous year. What we see consistently, and again, I know I've spoke about this, but I think there's value in repeating it. There's 4 factors that almost without exception, we see one or multiple of those factors involved in serious injury or fatal collisions, and that's excessive speed, distracted driving, impaired driving, or failing to wear a seatbelt. It is extraordinarily rare to not have one or multiple of those components in an investigation when we see a fatality. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but it's not very often. The point of that is it's preventable if folks will do those 4 things. we can continue to see numbers drop like we did across the province in 2023 in relation to fatalities. The next thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly was to provide you with a little bit of an update on our personnel within Middlesex OPP. I won't get into specific numbers of number of officers that we have on the street. That's just an operational security thing. But what I can share with really good news is that we have seen our numbers increase dramatically over the last 12 months. I would suggest a 20% increase in our uniform numbers on the street. That's through new recruiting efforts out of our headquarters in Aurelia, the 4th class, the intake at OPC, the police college. They moved from 350 cadets 3 times a year to 450 4 times a year. So that's resulted in us being able to put more people through the cadet process and get out on the street as a uniformed officer. Not only have we received numerous probationary officers, which is always good to have fresh perspectives, new blood come in, but we've also had a number of experienced OPP members transfer into Middlesex over the last year from other OPP detachments. And we've had experienced police officers from our municipal partners also come over to the OPP, in particular, multiple officers from London City Police. And without exception, all of those officers bring a different skill set, different training experiences that as a result, we get to benefit from locally. The good news is that for whatever reason, we're not losing officers going out the door on the other end. And all of this has come together to result in more officers being on the street every shift, which is good. We've also had the opportunity to hire 3 special constables over the course of the last year. This is a relatively new program to the OPP. And I've assigned them to our court office, which traditionally is managed by our uniform officers. The good news being that frees the uniform officers to be back up out on the street, doing their job, and the special constables managing it from within the office. We've also received over the last 3 years, and we're in year 3 of it now, under the Keeping Ontario Open for Business Act, or referred to as CUBA, the funding for us to take our emergency response officers, and we have 4 of them at Middlesex Detachment, move those positions to a regional position out of headquarters and backfill those positions with uniform members on the street again. And that will be taking place in the coming year. So that's 4 additional positions that we did not account for previously, but with that funding stream from the provincial government, it's allowed us to do that. And that's true for all 196 of the emergency response team members across the province. So what that translates into for us locally is 1 additional uniform member per shift every day. So really good news from a personnel standpoint. And I'm pleased to see that. I would like to provide council with a brief update with regard to some of the efforts we're making in regard to bail compliance. I know that we've spoken about this in this council in the past, and in particular, the concerns over violent offenders being on the street, being released, and reoffending. I suppose maybe the one positive thing that came out of Constable Prashala's tragic death a year ago in December was that we did a comprehensive review as an organization on what our approach was to violent offenders who are on judicial release. And as a result, we have created a program that is called our Offender Management Apprehension Program, or OMAP, which essentially identifies individuals who are on judicial release for violent crime or weapons-related crime. And it puts them under an intensive review process by us as the police to ensure that they're abiding by their conditions. It literally means knocking on their doors regularly to make sure that they're in compliance, and if they're not, they're under arrest. There's a warrant issued for them and they go back to jail. This is something that was put in place because of those tragic events, and it's something that has been very, very effective for us. I can tell you within Middlesex County, we actively check on 18 different offenders that are within this program right now, none of which that are in North Middlesex, but nevertheless, there are 18 within the county. We certainly want to be respectful of the fact that the courts have made the decision to release these folks. That's very much within their purview. What we want to do is make sure that there's a high level of accountability to make sure that they're abiding by the conditions they've been released on, and that's what we're doing. So I think it's important to share that with council so that you understand that's what's happening. That is provincial. That's obviously not just local. It's also in conjunction with Durham Region Police and Toronto Police, with all of the other municipal police services coming on board for the program as well across the province by the end of 2024. So hopefully that sets a tone that there's consequences for not abiding by conditions. The last thing that I would like to touch upon tonight is just in relation to the Police Services Board. I think probably everybody is aware that the Community Safety and Policing Act is going to come into effect on April 1st. So our Police Service Board in Middlesex, which was in Thames Center, will, in a very real sense, cease to exist in a couple of weeks, and the new board will start. And I have received some information with regard to some of who the members will be on the new board, and I'm excited for that. It's my understanding that Mayor Clark from Adelaide Metcalfe will sit on the board. Deputy Mayor Hodgkins from Lucan Bidoff.
From North Middlesex.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
North Middlesex, okay. Oh, you're sitting right in front of me. I should know that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone was listening. Deputy Mayor Brennan from Middlesex Center, and Deputy Mayor Smybert from Thames, as well as some government appointed members who I'm not aware of who they'll be. But I often get asked what my opinion of the change is. I think it's a really good thing. The opportunity to come before a board that's more representative of all of the municipalities to report on a regular basis is a positive thing, because then it can be brought back to council more regularly. I really enjoy doing these types of things, but I think that the formal Police Service Board process is important. The challenge is going to be structuring a report that's probably 20 pages right now for Thames Center, and not making it 100 pages for the new board. But that's a process that I'll work through as we develop that. So, but I'm excited for that to happen. I don't have a date for the first Police Service Board meeting as of yet, but I would anticipate that would happen in either April or May. So, pending any questions, that's my report for tonight. Thank you.
I'll turn it over to council for questions. Councillor Keogh first, then Councillor Nerda.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Inspector Stewart, commercial vehicle enforcement. Have you hired more officers for that? I understand there's quite a lack of officers in the MTO level.
Are you specific to MTO or
OPP.
Okay.
I know that Lucan has a commercial vehicle enforcement unit, is it not? Or an officer?
Well, we have a number of our officers are trained on commercial motor vehicle enforcement.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a number of different courses that allow them to be qualified at different levels.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure what our number would be, but I would suggest that we would have at least a dozen officers who are trained as commercial motor vehicle inspectors. Now, all of our uniform members are trained on commercial motor vehicle enforcement. But those officers, it's a sort of a basic level of training, the types of things to look for. Whereas our CMV trained officers will carry around portable scales, for example,
Right.
for overweight vehicles. And then, of course, we also have our Highway Safety Division team, which is out of London. Now, that is a regional resource that supports all 13 detachments throughout West Region. And they have a number of commercial motor vehicle inspectors assigned to that team. And certainly they are a resource that we can pull in to assist us in any of our investigations. One of the other things that we utilize is the MTO, and they're actually on the same radio talk group as us. So if they hear that one of our officers has a commercial truck stop and requires assistance, it's just simply a matter of going over to the radio, and one of the MTO officers, who really are the subject matter experts, will come out and assist us.
Okay. And I just have one more question for me. The increase in impaired driving, does that have any link with the legalization of marijuana?
Most definitely it does.
It does.
Excellent question. We did see an immediate uptake in the number of impaired drivers by drug when marijuana became legalized. And certainly we started to notice it a lot more in the vehicles as well. We, as a result, have started to train more and more of our drug recognition experts, is what we call them, DREs, that specialize in the process of identifying what drug a person specifically is impaired by. We've also made it mandatory training for all of our uniform officers for standardized field sobriety testing. That's, of course, every one of our uniform members has to have. What that is, that's what you see on television where they're making a person touch their nose or stand on one foot. That's literally that program, which helps to assess impairment by drug. So, yeah.
Councilor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we just go back to your presentation, we can use the first chart about violent crime, and I'll use assault. So in 2023, there was 33 charges of assault. So was that against 33 different people or just 33 charges? So 10 people having 3+ charges of assault at one time.
Good question. This actually relates to the number of occurrences, not charges. If we were to, this would also include instances where we investigate as an assault and we find it to be unfounded or there's no evidence to support the allegation that's been made. It's 33 separate instances that we investigate as opposed to charges.
Thank you.
Councilor Irwin.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to the inspector. One definition and one question. Could you please define for us the term mischief and what encompasses mischief as a charge?
Certainly, mischief can be a couple of different things: damaged property or interfere with the lawful enjoyment of property.
And the question, Worship, if I may, motor vehicle collision data. I'm curious if there are, and I think we raised this question last time you visited and presented to us, if there's areas in our community that's more prevalent for motor vehicle accidents, and if so, what can we do as a community to address that in terms of speed limits, signage, et cetera?
Yeah, I don't know off top of my head if we have specific areas that are more prevalent to collisions. Certainly that is something that I can engage my detachment analyst on to tell us that very quickly. And then what we can do is we can do an assessment of that area to see if there's any improvements that can be done. For example, if we have an intersection where we continue to see that there are collisions at that intersection, and we come out and we see something as simple as trees are overgrown, blocking a stop sign. And as a result, people go through the stop sign, maybe we cut back the tree. Rumble strips, a flashing red light, all these are types of solutions. And certainly I can have our analysts look at that, and then I can provide council with those hot spots and some suggestions if you would like.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Inspector Stewart. You made mention a little earlier on here of a non-emergency number. I've actually in conversations over the last couple years, different. You talk to somebody, this isn't where I can't call 911 for that. Say, and I'll give you an example of say, I just found a parked car kind of in my bush down the road, been there for a couple of days, for whatever reason could it be there. So number one, what is that number? Do you know that? Because I wouldn't mind putting that in my cell phone and a few others. Is that number advertised that we could get?
It is, absolutely. In fact, we even have it deckled on all of our cruisers.
Okay, I
now.
missed that. I'll try to pick up on that as the board. But where does that go, that non-emergency number? Where does that, it's not like it won't go to a 911 call center. It'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, another great question. So the number is 1-888-310-1122.
1122.
And it actually all goes to the same place. It all goes to our provincial communications center. But it's prioritized. If it comes in as on the non-emergency line, then it'll wait in queue if nobody's available to answer it until all of the 911 calls that are incoming are dealt with. However, it's very rare that you'll call that non-emergency line and not have it picked up right away because we have sufficient staffing in our communication center to answer those types of calls. Where you will see times where there may be a delay is a really bad weather event and there's multiple collisions coming in and there's just an influx of calls. But they all actually go to the same place. They all actually go to the very same call takers. It's just how they're prioritized from a computer standpoint as they're incoming to the communication center. So, and in fact, our model provincially is changing to where now those calls go into the London Provincial Communication Center. As we move through 2024, we're moving to a provincial model where the next available call taker in the province will answer it. So you may actually call and have someone at the Thunder Bay Communication Center answer it and then route it to the dispatcher locally. It's one of those situations where you would never know you're calling somebody in Thunder Bay. It is irrelevant from when it gets answered. It's just a means of making the process even quicker and more streamlined. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Okay. One more.
If you don't mind, just quickly, somewhat along the same line, Crime Stoppers. There's a call for that too. We do have that at home. Sorry, but
yep.
Are you getting calls on that? Like just, number one, is there people?
Yeah. We do. And so Crime Stoppers is a tool that we definitely use. The way that the process works, it's completely anonymous, as we know. When someone gives a tip to Crime Stoppers, it's routed through to the detachment area that the tip relates to. It then goes to one of 3 people at the detachment, including our detective sergeant. And there's a process that every detachment has in place to filter those tips and to route them out to the appropriate person to follow up on. So for example, if we were to get a tip about drug activity in Park Hill through Crime Stoppers, that would route through to our community street crime supervisor, who would then assess that information and make decisions about what next steps are. I can tell you that it is a very, very effective tool for us. We get a lot of Crime Stoppers tips that not only will clue us into new information, probably more importantly, provides us with additional information when we're looking to build grounds to be able to get a warrant, for example. Those tips can actually really help build up the body of information that we're putting before the courts for them to decide whether or not we can enter a home. So very effective. I would encourage everyone to continue to use it. And I will just reiterate, it's completely confidential. And that is something that we do not stray from. So.
Councilor Nerda.
What's the average wait time or response time for a 911 emergency call?
That's a good question, and I can tell you that is one that I face at every council that I speak to, because it's unfortunately, our partners in London face some wait times right now with some of their calls. If we have a 911 call dispatched, it's immediately sent out to our officers. If our officers in Middlesex are all tied up, we then go to what we call closest to the call, where we will then dispatch the next closest officer regardless of what county they're working in. So for example, if there was a call, 911 call here in Park Hill, and all the Middlesex officers are tied up and are unable to clear and come to that call immediately, they will then start looking for a Huron or Lambton officer, probably in Grand Bend, for example, to immediately be dispatched here as closest to the call. So that's sort of the way that that system works. We take a lot of pride in the fact that if it's a 911 call, we are dispatching an officer immediately.
Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Daigle?
Thank you. Inspector, just a question on the call volumes. Is there, we're given about 8 categories here, and I think the occurrence, it's by occurrence, not by convictions. These numbers that, where you've said we've had violent crimes, 55, that was just occurrences.
That's correct.
Do you have a spreadsheet that we could get that would show us where the 2,800 comes from?
Like the total number of calls?
23 calls, yes.
Certainly, I could provide you with
Because
that.
what we've got here only comes to 1,000, so we're about 1,800. Just kind of wondering where it is.
Yeah.
Where we are. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I focus on, our violent crime, our property crime, and our drug crime, you're absolutely correct, Councillor. That's just a small portion of the overall. But I'd be pleased to provide a full breakdown of all the calls for council. No problem.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I just have a couple of comments. Question for you. It's, I agree with your comment about encouraging residents to keep calling the OPP. I get calls, when they say they've called the OPP and they said nothing's happened. And a lot of calls have been where you had a large presence here in March. So there was a lot of I said, keep calling. I said, they want the calls. They need to have that, because we've talked about that before. And so we want to reiterate to, if residents call you, tell them, call the OPP. Even if they don't think anything's happening, it is. It's just being put together, just to your comment. I do have a question that hasn't been touched on. It's on traffic. First of all, I do see more presence, and I'm glad to see that. I know in the past, people have said, we're paying how much and what are we getting for it?
Mm-hmm.
And so no one minds paying if you feel you're getting service. I think that's how a lot of people feel. But my question is, in particular, is the electronic signs. More and more communities are putting those up, coming into built up areas.
Mm-hmm.
And we've spent quite a bit of money in the last year or so putting them up in our community as well. Do you feel they help?
Most definitely.
I think it helps when you're doing 90 because you're in a 90 road and all of a sudden you don't realize you're coming into a built up area and they flash. That's how I would see, but that was my question. And do you see if they're sitting in the same place too long, there's an acceptance of them? Or do you really keep helping the same way?
Yeah, I think that they need to be put in strategic spots from the outset. Like, for example, the one on Main Street here, I think it's in a good spot. And I don't think that it has a shelf life being there. I think if it's in the right spot from the outset, then it's effective. Speed signs are not going to stop somebody who is in a rush and is going to speed anyways.
Right.
What they are going to do is they're going to slow down those folks who are being responsible and just don't realize that they're going a little bit too fast, myself included, coming into town tonight when it was flashing at me and I realized I was doing 55 and I should have slowed down. And it was like, oops, my goodness, I wasn't trying to speed. I wasn't paying, I guess, enough attention. It's that awareness piece, so it's effective, right? So it is a component to dealing with speeding problems, but it's only one component. But I do feel it's effective.
Okay, thank you. I do agree, and I was just wondering about if you thought they had a shelf life, because we do have a couple that we move around.
Mhm.
And maybe we should be purchasing those 2 or 3 more that we should purchase to make sure we're covered all over.
The mobile ones are nice in that if you start to get complaints from the residents, you can put it out, especially if it's one of the ones that records data. Because it allows, and I would ask, please, if you do have those devices that share the data or that you captures the data, share it with me. Because it allows us to be really strategic when we're coming out to do enforcement. It's one thing to for me to have our officers come out to do speed enforcement on Main Street. It's another to have them come out Monday to Friday, 4:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., which tells me it's probably commuters. Monday to Friday, where we can be really strategic with those resources. And if the signs are recording that data and you can share it with me, then we'll send the officers out at those specific times to address it. So
Perfect. And we do have some of those. I won't say which ones, of course.
Yeah.
And I do know that Jaden looks at those results as well.
Yeah.
And because they are very informative, for sure.
they're very effective, and it's a great tool for us to really be strategic. So
All right, thank you. If there's no more questions, council, thank you, Inspector, for your time and coming and give us that report. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Our next delegation is, it's Susan Mills from Huron Transit. Huron Shores Transit, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, whenever you're ready, Susan.
Oh, thank you. I was listening to the previous presentation too, and it reminded me to let you know that in the buses, both of the buses we have, there is a notification that we put in. It's in sort of an ad size because the buses can take ads, but it has the passenger courtesy conduct policy on it. And it does include that OPP non-emergency number right on there. So if someone were seeing something on the bus that was illegal, or they were concerned about, they would be able to report that to the police. Obviously, the driver is looking forward, not backward, right? Slides, you got them up, Natalie? Okay. I'm gonna try and be as quick as possible because I know time is important. The first couple of slides look a little familiar from last year, but they do have some updated numbers on them. So the next slide, please, Natalie. Okay, so this one, just a reminder of, you guys are a partner transit municipality, and we are trying to achieve equity of access for our residents to all of our community's assets. Last year was an expensive year across the board, and we have various meetings with MTO staff through the course of the year, and all of the small rural systems were saying, some of them were saying, we don't know if we're going to make it to the end of 2023, and others were saying, well, we don't know how far we'll make it in 2024. We may have to start cutting services. And so the MTO did listen, and they opened up the funding envelope, and they said, okay, put in your requests and we'll see what we can do. So we were in the same boat. We have not done any marketing or advertising since August of last year, because that's basically where we took money from to put it into transportation services. And we asked for an additional $318,168, which we got. So good news is we have popped up our budget lines now for March 31st, 2025. Next slide, please. Just a little reminder, we have 4 routes operated by 2 buses and 8 drivers. And the Route 2 bus, which is the Grand Bend to London and back, does a return trip, and then at noon it switches over to provide the Route 3 and 4, and Route 4 being Grand Bend through to Strathroy via North Middlesex. Last year, we did some adjustments. We added a bus stop at the Craigwheel Gardens seniors apartments. And we had some public meetings, and we also added a third sort of end of day return trip, which would then provide North Middlesex residents with at least 6 hours of time in Grand Band or 8 hours in Strathroy. So that they've got more time and they would actually have a full 8 hours in Strathroy. Next slide, please. So we have now completed 2 post-pandemic years of transit, and what we're finding is our buses are up and running 98% of the time, so we are providing a much more consistent service. And I'm happy to say that they're on time 72% of the time. Now, that might not sound like a lot, except that we're counting it to the minute, and our buses share the roads with other traffic and, of course, need to slow down in poorer weather. I'm happy to say that we have 1,672 riders per month. And all the 2 years of data now are indicating that most of our trips are local versus long distance. Now, the importance of that is the feasibility study predicted that 73% of trips would be long distance. And so they projected a $7 average fare. And of course, if you're charging $10 for long distance and $5 for local, and you're basically 50-50, we're not getting that $7. Our fare is closer to $5.31. Additionally, the feasibility study included a maximum 20% discount for the multiple pre-purchased trips. So basically a monthly pass. And what we're finding is that that pass was reduced in cost to $50. And even though we increased it back up to $80 when I came on board in 2022, it's actually providing a 60% discount. So people with those monthly passes are basically paying $3 per ride. It's way too low. It's not sustainable. We've increased it to $80 as of February the 1st of this year. We will increase it again to $100 in September. And to give you a sense of how that compares to the other small rural systems, that still would be the lowest priced monthly pass. Middlesex County and Tilson charge $165 per monthly pass, and Norfolk County charges $149. So still at $100, we are providing a significant discount, but we can't go from 60 to 120 in one shot. So we're creeping it up slowly. We had a spike in our ridership in 2023. We were providing employee shuttles as of July on Route 1. We found that a lot of students were coming up from Sarnia to work in the area. And so that went on for 5 months. We rented buses from Lambton Elderly Outreach. It employed the use of a local taxi company as well. We also did the summer buses on Route 2 going from London to Grand Bend to alleviate the demand of ridership off of our regular buses. Next slide, please. So our ridership is definitely on track. This time last year, I said we would double ridership, which we surpassed in October, and we ended up with 20,066 boardings in 2023. And we are already on pace for our 32,000 ridership this year. Our goal for revenue was not met, and that is completely down to the difference in the percentages of long distance versus local trips, and also the heavily discounted monthly pass. So my goal this year is to make sure we actually reach our revenue goal. Next slide, please. This chart shows you clearly the significant increase in ridership in 2023 over the previous years. Of importance in this chart is that you'll see there's not a major drop off of the fall and winter months that usually happens in this area. And what that tells us is people have made the switch. They are relying on that bus to get to shopping, appointments, whatever the errands they're running, there is a reliance and there's already a commitment there. This year, January and February, those are the two light blue columns over on the left-hand side. Already our ridership for these 2 months is more than double January and February of last year. So I'm looking at that and it's a little bit scary, but I think we're going to hit 32,000. We may even surpass that as well this year. Next slide, please. So if we take a look at it by year and by route, the purple column is Route 1. That's the Sarnia to Grand Bend line through Lambton Shores. And that huge burst of ridership is related to the number of workers who are coming into the area and are traveling almost on a daily basis throughout the summer, and then through Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays throughout the winter as well. What we found is that the businesses that did report into us that they were using student labor, a lot of those students are from Lambton College, were Sobeys in Grand Bend, Foodland in Forest, McDonald's in Grand Bend and Exeter, Wendy's in Exeter, the Guardian Pharmacy in Exeter, of course, the hotels like Colonial, and Groggs and McPherson's in Port Franks, and Arcona Home Hardware, the Golf and Country Club in Forest. So those businesses are all benefiting from the fact that those workers are able to travel into the area. Now, last year, we did a survey for North Middlesex residents, and we did public meetings because we wanted to increase ridership. And as you can see, we have managed to increase ridership. The percentage is good, 504%, but the count is still very low, 151 boardings. So I do have some thoughts about that, which I'm going to get into in a bit later. Just quickly, next slide. I'm going to run through these. I did a breakdown by route. So this is the Sarnia to Grand Bend route, the most used bus stops, local bus stops within that area. Obviously, Lambton College and Lambton Mall are destination points for local residents, but the Forest Library bus stop remains the number one locally, followed by the Welcome Center, which is in Grand Bend, and then the Points Plaza at Kettle and Stony Point. Next slide, please. On the Grand Bend to London and back line, the bus stop sitting in McDonald's at the north end of Exeter, which only came online in February, so within 10 months, it's very quickly taken over top spot. It doesn't surprise me because at the north end of Exeter, they do have a lot of employers, and I do know that people are using our buses to get over to employers in Exeter. So not a surprise there. Plus, there's there's major retailers at that end of town. The second, the busiest one is right in front of the municipal building / library at Sanders, which is also at the north point of what they consider to be their downtown core. And then third is Dashwood. And what I noticed was throughout, there was 10 people getting off and 10 people getting on every day during the week. And then I realized what they're doing is they're actually going to Hayter's Turkeys. So I was wondering, I was thinking, Dashwood, why is that happening? And that's why it's happening. So again, it's employment based. Next slide, please. Route 3 is having similar challenges as Route 4. So this is the Grand Bend to Goderich through Blue Water. Right now, the busiest bus stop to that is the one sitting in Grand Bend, whether people are heading up to Goderich or coming back to Grand Bend. So we still have challenges there. Walmart is the busiest stop on that route. It's a local trip for somebody who lives in Bayfield. And when you look at those communities, which would include St. Joseph, Zurich, and Hensel, and Bayfield, the Walmart Plaza offers them much larger retailers, a much bigger grocery store. Hensel only has, for instance, a convenience store, and so does Zurich. So from a possibility of basics like grocery shopping and Canadian Tire, that's where they're heading. Now let's take a look at the next slide, which is Route 4. Not surprisingly, Park Hill is the busiest stop in the North Middlesex route. And of course, last year there was a lot of construction. So it's actually, of course, the McLeod bus stops that are the busiest. We may see a change this year with that. And of course, Shops on Sydenham and the Walmart Plaza in Strathroy are the two busiest go-tos and leaving from. The Shops on Sydenham bus stop also allows people to connect with Strathroy Caradoc Transit, so they can actually travel through to Kamoka, London, or Sarnia from that bus stop. The buses all use that same bus stop, and Middlesex County goes through and uses that same bus stop as well. Let's take a look. Next slide, please. So when we talk about ridership, and ridership is, like I said, it's still low for routes 3 and 4. At this point, we ask ourselves, perhaps fixed route, fixed schedule is not the right formula for this community. Maybe we should be looking at on-demand. On-demand provides more flexibility in terms of where that bus is going, more flexibility in schedules. It does mean that people would need to book in, call ahead and book their seat. For some people, that might be more reassuring than the thought of showing up to a bus stop and, do I get on? Is it going to be busy? What will happen? So it may provide more confidence for them to actually use the system. And it can increase the actual reach of that bus service. So what I mean by that is we actually did talk about how North Middlesex residents, say from Park Hill, who might want to go to London, how could they actually get over to, say, Highway 4 to connect with the Middlesex County bus, which comes up through Lucan? And the answer to that would be an on-demand service. So someone can book ahead and say, I want to go to London, and so I want to be able to be dropped off in front of Lucan Community Center, please. And that makes it possible with an on-demand system. So it does provide more of a connection. I am working with Blaze Transit right now. They are providers of the software that schedules all this and makes it possible. So I've been feeding them data and more data about our ridership and our routes and where our bus stops are and where people are getting on and where we think they're getting off. And I'm hoping to have some scenarios back from them next week with some pricing. That it would require a software purchase, like as a licensing purchase. And I would be looking for a grant for that. So I'm hopeful there would be a federal grant for that. So I'm just going to, and I will report back to you. Obviously, this affects the residents of North Middlesex. And if we decide to go that route, I'm going to come back to you with what Blaze has come up with and see what we all think about that. Okay. Next slide, please. So overall, by community, not surprising, Lambton Shores and South Huron have the highest usage by community. They're also the two largest municipalities with the largest populations. Kettle and Stony Point First Nation comes in there with a good amount of count, considering there's 1,900 people who actually live there. Blue Water, and then North Middlesex with a total of 240 count. Next slide, please. So who takes the bus? Initially, I know the task force thought, well, it's going to be people who are elderly, people who can't drive, people who say are no incomes, and definitely that's a portion of it. But what we're finding is there's a lot of young people on the bus. And we're looking at millennials who now are in their late 30s, pushing 40, believe it or not, and Gen Z, which is age 15 through to 24. Interestingly, those two generations do not see car ownership in the way the older generations do. They see car ownership as an unwanted expense. They would rather spend their money on experiential things, not physical things. Now, according to Rate Hub, the actual ownership price of a car every month is $1,300. So if we're looking forward to planning, like community planning, public transit is going to be important as those two generations come to the forefront to be more active within the community. Based on the Census 2021 data, I divided out where those Gen Zs, the millennials are, and North Middlesex has 17% of the entire group within our area. So just to give you some thoughts on that. Next slide, please. What else do we do in 2023? Agency Day Pass. So this is a pass that social agency, medical agency, job support can purchase on behalf of their clients that they help with transit, public transit. So for instance, we sold a good number to the Canadian Mental Health Association, which helps the clients get to appointments, Blue Water Health, Indwell in London, and the VON support services. And it provides unlimited travel for that client, regardless of where they're going to go, for $10. We also added a flex stop to improve connections between our system and in other systems. That bus stop is actually sitting on Weston campus. And just a short walk from that bus stop, somebody can get an intercity bus. So there's 3 separate bus lines that go in right behind Elgin Hall, where you can get one of those buses and travel to Kitchener, Toronto, Hamilton, Montreal. We also brought in, as I mentioned, right out front, a passenger courtesy conduct and safety policy. We posted that on our website, Facebook, and we have it physically displayed in the buses. And along with that, we put in security cameras on the passenger compartments. So there's a warning when you get on the bus, there's a warning sticker that says, you know, that video and audio is being recorded. That was a proactive stance that we took because if we think back to January of 2023, TTC was having some violent episodes, and we thought we should be proactive and make sure we had a process and protocol in place in case we had any kind of incident like that. And I can tell you that at this point, we have 1 theft reported just recently. And that passenger had seen the signage and made a report to the police, and the police came to us to request that piece of video. So it's working, people are seeing it. And of course, we take advertising on our buses now. So we came up with an advertising policy to make sure we have something in place that there's appropriate advertising, and we continue outreach on marketing. And then next up, next slide, thank you. 2024, obviously increased ridership, increased revenue. We want to increase our customer service quality. And what I mean by that is we want to put in transit shelters with solar lighting, benches and bike racks. Bike racks help increase the first and last mile access to bus stops. So if you lived out of town perhaps and you're able to cycle and you've got a further trip, at least now you can lock up your bike before you get on the bus. That is grant dependent. We have applied to the Federal Rural Solutions Grant for the amount of $387,000. We applied in September. We're just crossing our fingers and still waiting, and hopefully we will have an answer soon. And like I said, we're investigating the on-demand options for Blue Water and North Middlesex. Final slide, please. So you'll recall from last year, the same diagram. This is now updated with actual numbers from 2023. So we renewed our contract with Voyago on April 1st, and that was at a higher rate. $7 per hour higher rate, which when you're running at 7,800 service hours a year, an extra $7 an hour adds up, plus the cost of fuel. Our projections for fare box and advertising would offset that cost and the provincial support, but we would be looking at covering an amount of about $379,000, which works out to $10 per resident, and it would be split based on population. Now, I know that's more than was predicted, but at least now we have real numbers to deal with that we've had the last 2 years. What I want to say about this is that, as I said, we have had meetings throughout the year with MTO, and we are part of Southwestern Community Transit Association, and we are an association of 8 small rural transit systems with an executive committee. And the executive committee, their role is advocacy on behalf of all of us. And they have been doing that at the provincial level with MTO officials and the minister to get them to rethink the gas tax funding formula for small systems. And certainly there's been discussions, and the MTO officials that get to hear us talk about our challenges and our successes believe that it probably needs to be adjusted to recognize the realities of a rural system versus a larger transit system in a much larger urban center with greater population. So there's advocacy that's going on this summer, and I'm hoping to report back to you that there'll be a different formula that will apply to us for 2025. So not unexpectedly, 2024 really is a make or break year in terms of decisions. I know that you're probably looking at the number of passengers versus the costs and thinking, we can't really do that. I totally get that. So I'm going to be back in front of you, hopefully with some good news, say around September time, and hopefully before that with some good news on the on-demand front. And it's really our last year to give that a chance to see if that's a better fit for this particular community. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions from council? Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. Susan, did you say February 1st you had looked the rate up?
Yeah, as of February 1st, we do a 60-day notification.
And are you projecting to do another one this summer, or are you just going to let that
September,
run?
we're going to do it again in September.
September?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Irwin, I will say, I agree right now that $10 is a big number for the amount of ridership. And so I look forward to what happens in the fall here. My question is, if you do the on-demand, have any idea what the cost would be for, like if I call and say I need to be in Lucan at a certain time? It isn't going to be a $5 charge.
I'm hoping to have some information back from Blaze as to the scenarios and what might be charged for that.
Okay.
And once I've got that report, I'll bring it to you so that you'll know it, but we'll also obviously need to do quite a bit of marketing push to get people to understand that things have changed. So it might, like I said, it might be the right formula. We do have bus stops here in town and in Nelson Craig. I think those locations are good, but there could be some people who haven't been able to get to those bus stops because they can't walk that far.
Well, I do appreciate you put that second one in. I know that was a request at the open house that you had to have that one at Fridwell Gardens.
Yeah.
And you responded to that. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? If not, as always, Susan, thank you. It's good hearing from you. And I know you do a lot of work on this, and congratulate you for all of what you do on it. We'll see what
Thank you.
happens in the fall.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Our first department report is from Manager of Public Works on the 2025 tandem plow.
Good evening, your worship, members of council. Before you this evening, I have a report for you for the purchase of a new snowplow truck. This item was a 20 or is a 20, essentially a 2023 capital project or capital purchase. As I mentioned before, council may recall that I'm using the canoe purchasing program to purchase this truck, and has been ordered through Viking Chavez in Mount Forest. So, I'm happy to take any questions from council. Council may recall also that I had requested that the budget be increased to $450,000 to accommodate this purchase. And the purchase complete is at $411,325. And I would also, at this time, I was remiss in putting into this report that there is an initiative from Viking that if the municipality is willing to pay for the cabin chassis when it arrives at Viking, that there's essentially an $8,500 reduction in the price of the truck. So that's right in the quote that's attached to the report. Yeah, so essentially, I'm happy to take any questions that council may have.
Questions? Councilor Nerda.
There we go. So Vance, if we ordered this today, we're not getting it to the end of the year, right? Take four months from the third quarter, right? So if we'll get it December of this year?
To your worship, that's correct.
Any other questions? Councilor Keo?
Thank you, Mayor. Vance, we are taking advantage of that $8,500, paying for it on delivery in Mount Forest.
To your worship, that's correct. That was my recommendation. And I did not include that in the initial motion, but with council's indulgence, perhaps we could alter that motion and make that so.
That's the treasurer that is going ahead that way.
Through your worship, yes. Essentially, once like I'll be in touch with the reps from Viking, and when it gets here, then I can definitely arrange that through the treasurer.
Okay. I had one more question. With this, this truck is taking place of a 10-year replacement, is that correct?
Through your worship, that's correct.
So if this was a 2023 budget item, it's 2024 ordered truck, so it will be 2024 the end of. We will not see this thing go actually into the new year. Is that correct?
Through your worship,
Viking gets their fitting done.
Through your worship, I was just on the phone actually this afternoon before the council meeting, and because they're ordering trucks, and I mentioned this, I believe I mentioned this before as well to council with my methodology with this, because they're ordering trucks all the time, our delivery date and so forth is going to seem a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more sooner than it would be if we were to go to a traditional tender and go through all the truck dealerships that way. So my discussion with Viking was that they said that our cabin chassis should be delivered within a month of our conversation today. And then the upfitting of the body and so forth would take place so that it would actually, their target was actually late Q3, but they're saying Q4 as sort of a bit of a buffer there. So, I mean, that being said, of course, there may be some slight delays, and although he didn't indicate that, but I'm just in my experience with ordering trucks, there can be some delays. If we had gone a traditional route, you're absolutely right, 18 months to 2 years out for a new truck.
My concern was, if it's going to be a 2024 truck, but we don't get it to 2025, and then we do a 10-year replacement, we only get 9 years of.
Oh, I see.
So that, I guess that's what I was trying to do is, I didn't want to short, I don't imagine any of us will be here in 9 years to argue this, but, or maybe we will. But I was just trying to define that as a true 10-year replacement.
I see what you're saying. But
Will work.
yeah, sure, certainly.
Okay.
But it's well, that's okay. That's okay.
I do get what you're saying.
Yes.
Saying it's not a year old when we get it, that we're not figuring out that way. We've had that.
We're working from the date of manufacture
Right.
of the truck.
Right.
Versus the date of possession.
Ideally it'd be date of delivery, right? That's what you're getting at. Here, delivery here.
Well, that's what
Okay, yes, okay.
Absolutely. We'll make that happen.
Other questions? Yep, go ahead.
Actually, I do. That was the other question. The replacement truck, it will be going on a liquidation website.
Through your worship, absolutely.
For those that are listening, do we, the proceeds that come from the sale of that truck, how does that show up in our accounting?
Through your worship, I will attempt to answer this question, although the director of finance isn't here. Essentially, it would be through general revenues. As I asked her in the past, hoping that any, for example, if we liquidate a truck or we surplus a truck, that it could be specifically towards something, and she said that wasn't the case. So it would be just general revenue, but to the best of my knowledge.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions. We have a recommendation from, I believe it's be amended to include the $8,500. Correct? Do we have a mover of that? Counselor Nerda, Counselor Day. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Vance. Next
you.
report is from our clerk, and that is a pre-approval request from bylaw. Yeah.
Thank you, and through you. So as council may recall, in early February of 2024, council approved the market and organizational review, which included the creation of a corporate services coordinator bylaw position. During budget committee discussions, it was determined that the most cost-effective long-term approach for sourcing a vehicle would not be a lease year-over-year approach rather than an outright purchase. So that recommendation came from budget committee, would be $30,000 to be proposed in the draft 2024 capital budget, which we will be considering next week. This purchase would be funded through the vehicle and equipment reserve as a 2024 capital project. And if I receive pre-approval, it would align better with the onboarding of that new position. Thank you.
Questions? Counselor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ashley, how long would we be keeping? I don't know if you can answer this, car. If we pay for this car versus getting a lease, how long are we proposing to keep the car? Is this every 5 years we're going to replace this? Every 10 years we're going to replace this?
Thank you, and through you, I believe we would follow the policy in place for vehicle replacement. And I don't know if any of the other directors or managers fill me in because it's my first vehicle request. I believe it's 10 years, but no, it's.
Through the mayor, it is 10 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? I would ask you, this is like a real number. You have a vehicle that this is going to fit within?
Yes.
Okay. And it's not a four-wheel drive pickup truck?
No.
Okay. No, it's a smaller, what I'm getting at, it's a smaller vehicle, more fuel efficient.
Yes, so we source code for a vehicle consistent with what the previous contract we're driving. So like a smaller four-door white car.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins, seconded by Councilor Irwin. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, a report from Director of Community Services, and that's the pre-approval of the goal frames in the basketball.
Mayor Rob, members of council, this report is for pre-approval of 3 capital projects that I proposed. All 3 projects are time sensitive to get them in the spring. I'll speak to each project a little bit. The first project is our Minor Soccer Association requested goal frames through the Community Development Fund. The Community Development Fund actually kind of pushed it back as a capital project, because typically we buy the fixed equipment at Naren. They need them for spring. They start in the start of May. So that is a $5,000 project. The Middlesex Rugby Club is also a new club that's ready to get started this year. In order to start, they need rugby nets. With the current wait time to get a net, we're starting to get to, the point where if we don't order, we might not make the start of their season, and I do not want to prohibit them. And then the final item is basketball nets. They've got a significant wait time as well. I'd like to get them in early spring in about May. On the basketball net side of things, the Optimist Club, the Park Hill Optimist Club, is big supporters of this project. They will be presenting the municipality with a $5,000 donation towards this project. That wasn't anticipated on the start. I got a call maybe last week from one of their members saying that there would be a $5,000 check that they approved their last meeting towards this project. So I will put something on the signage to recognize them for that donation. Yeah, those 3 projects are what I'm looking for approval for in order to source them in time.
Questions from council? Councilor Nerda, and then Councilor Daigle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brandon, so the true cost for those basketball nets is 7,000, right? So 12 minus the 5? Or is it 12, which is including?
The 12 would be our cost without any funding. I did get an email probably a week ago saying that it's actually kind of a special going on right now, so it'll be a little bit less than 12, probably in 15% range, and then less the 5 that they give us as well. So
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Daigle, same question. Any other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins, seconded by Councilor Daigle. All in favor? Carried. Our next one is 5.4, the report from Economic Development and Communications Coordinator on the electronic sign in Elsa Craig. And I just want to make comment to anybody who's watching. That report wasn't originally on the agenda, but it is online on the agenda now, correct? Okay, and we have a paper copy in front of us, council as well. Go ahead, Natalie.
Thank you. As council will recall, an electronic sign was approved by council to be installed in Elsa Craig to replace the current sign on the main street. Through discussions with community members and investigating different sign technologies, we found that the amount budgeted for 2023 wasn't enough. We would like to recommend an increase in the budget, which would go to the 2024 budget. The total amount of the sign. So the sign itself would be 75,000 as opposed to 40,000, which was budgeted in 2023. With extra costs, we've allotted an extra $15,000 for building the base and the power supply adjustments with Hydro One for a total of $90,000. So I apologize the report not being included in the agenda. We wanted to make sure adjustments were made to the report, but because we're going through budget deliberations early next week, that combined with the delivery of the sign being 11 to 12 weeks, we wanted to make sure that the sign is in and installed before the Elsa Craig 150 celebration at the end of July. So I didn't want to wait an extra 2 weeks in case that put us too close to that line there. So it's our recommendation that council increase, to add to the 2024 budget, the extra $50,000 for the sign.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. Questions from council? Councilor Keo.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Natalie, this sign that is proposed for Elsie Craig, it will have a message board or a message goes across, is that correct?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
And that can be changed here in the office, or does it need
That's
to be
correct.
changed remotely back at Elsa Creek?
It's all of the content can be uploaded remotely.
Okay.
So it's basically from a web browser. So it doesn't even have to be here. It can be from wherever someone signs in. So the sign construction itself, we really liked the sign of the Lambton Shores community sign that is located in front of the Shores Arena. And we wanted to make sure that it was a good fit for Elsa Craig. Currently, the sign has a sign underneath the LED section, which points to the Elsa Craig Art Center. So the supplier has agreed to add that in as a backlit piece, which can be replaced at any time. So should the Elsa Craig Art Center change locations, we can always change that sign up below the LED sign.
Okay,
But
we're not limited then.
no, that's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins. That's the same question. You guys are mind reading here tonight. Any other questions from council? I would be remiss if I didn't add to Councilor Canellis not being here. And I know with this sign here, there was a concern about the height of the sign, that it should be higher. I wanted to bring that up because I know that is for Councilor Canellis, and we talked about it, but it should be high enough that traffic can see going by.
Yeah, I think we do have measurements that I've discussed with our community services director about the sign when it's installed. And we want to make sure that it's not going to, first of all, obstruct any sight lines with traffic
Right.
going through.
Right, that was the
And
concern. that I
any
noted.
so all of that will be, like, there'll be a lot
Okay.
of attention to detail as far as the size and the placement of it.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. Who will all have responsibility of putting on this sign? You know, number one, to keep it up there, is it 2 or 3 people, or is it falling into your hands or Felicia's hands, or, you know, how many people? Because just to keep it current, you know, as, you know, to change the thing.
Right, so through the mayor, as the communication coordinator, I'll be in charge of uploading the content, but we will be in touch with community members in Elsa Craig with a request form on our website. They can also contact me by phone or email to request content to be loaded to it. So we'll be in touch with groups like the Friends of the Old Town Hall and the Art Center and the Village Association to make sure that any communications they see need to be communicated to the community, then make sure that happens.
It will be you actually programming it on. They can give you
Correct.
the information,
Staff,
but it will be
yeah.
you actually putting it on the sign.
Yeah, there'll be a number of us that will have access.
Is there a possibility of another trainee underneath you that could do it if, say,
Oh, yeah,
you're on 2
definitely.
weeks holidays, you know,
Yes,
and it needed to be changed, is what I'm getting at.
yeah, so through the mayor, we will have staff here that will have lock-in access to be able to do it, yeah.
The finished sign, is it going to be similar to the one we saw the picture of? With, I think it was Blue Waters or somebody.
Lambton
Lambton
Shores, I
Shores,
think
maybe,
that's what you're.
yes.
Yeah, through the mayor, it's very similar in design, and we have the ability to make it customized to our branding with our colors and our logo. So it will have that construction style, but it will be modified to reflect North Middlesex brand.
I'm just, from what I saw in that picture, any verbiage area is going to be not quite high, similar to the height that's there now, where they put up their signs.
Like in Elsa Craig,
Yes.
yes. So through the mayor, I think that will be something that we'll definitely be taking a look at to remain consistent with the signage and to make sure that the county is okay with the size and the placement of it being a county road there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we have a recommendation, a request to add that 90. Counselor Irwin, Counselor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. Sorry, the next report is from Economic Development again, and that is from, go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much. For those who don't know me, I'm Felicia Crystal, the facility event planner. So my first task that I had was to create this community guide for North Middlesex. So just about the community guide, what I have created so far, it will have the information as following. Municipal and council contacts, as well as general information, community contacts for organizations, clubs, groups, places of worship, and youth activities, local childcare and kids camps, business directory, which is linked to our website, facilities, parks, and open spaces, 2024 community events, and health services. So the goals and objectives of this community guide is to better serve our community with an easily accessible guide. And it will be used as a resource for municipal services and contact. It will hopefully attract outside residents to visit and join our community, especially with it highlighting our 2024 events. I'm hoping to have it available biannually. My goal is to have it available April 1st for the first edition, and the second edition be available September 1st. And the proposal is to have it available on our website biannually for 2024. And I will post on our social media accounts as well as within the community via a flyer with a QR code to link right to our website for the community guide. And that's it. Any questions or comments?
Questions? Counselor Nerda.
I think this guide is very well done. So congratulate you on this. However, we brought this up with the rec committee last night. And is there any way that we could maybe change the 2024 community events? It's on page 27 of the guide. It is quite difficult to read.
Thank you.
For some feedback.
Yes, thank you for the question. I did think about it, and my plan was that I thought of changing that page to a condensed per edition. So for the first edition, I was thinking of changing it for only events within March 1st to September 1st to be able to highlight those events more, have the writing larger as well as the calendar itself larger. And then for the second edition, have September 2024 to March 2025.
And are we thank you for that. And is this going to be in print as well? In a binded book left here at the municipality, left a copy at the library?
For this year, it will just be online for budget purposes, but for 2025, I will bring it to council to hopefully have something like that.
Great. Thank you, Felicia.
Counselor Daigle.
Your suggestion about only doing half the year at a time is great. The only thing I'd like to see is that you overlap it a month. So it's like when you buy a calendar, it's always got the last month, just so we don't miss a month. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Other questions? Counselor Irwin?
First off, congratulations on the guide. And I know it was a big part of the recreation master plan to have something of this nature. So very happy to see it go forward. Councilor Nerda's comment really talked to accessibility and accessible reading. So hopefully we can review it against accessible standards in future as we solve aging populations, et cetera, something to look at. This reminds me of Spectrum, as what City of London does, where they do a spring, summer, and a fall, winter publication of their activities. So I think it'll go over very well. And just to let council know, we were chatting before the meeting. There is an opportunity in future potentially as a revenue generator to have sponsorship in the guide. I understand that may offset printing costs and other features.
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions? Comments? No? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Counselor Daigle, seconded by Counselor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Felicia. I believe that's our last report. We have passing of accounts. And if there's questions, we'll try to answer. If not, we'll have to get them to you as our treasurer is not here this evening. Any questions on there? No questions? No, we need a motion to receive for information. Counselor Keough, Counselor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Boy, that's the first time that's happened, I think. The fact that Estelle and Counselor Cornelison is here made a difference. Yes, no question. All right. Committee reports. ABCA, if there's any questions on that, the minutes are in there for the last two. Any questions for ABCA? We would have to get them from, okay. Blue Water Recycling,
Nothing at this time.
Economic Development,
Nothing at this time.
Local School Advisory,
There is a meeting next week, Your Worship, where we're going to be reviewing our presentation to Thames Valley District School Board. And we'll be bringing that presentation to council at the April 6th meeting prior to presenting it to the board.
okay. The Rec Committee,
We had a meeting last evening and it was a very good meeting. And there'll be stuff coming forward from it for future council meeting to look at any policy.
okay. Yeah. The Fire Committee, for them. Budget Committee, well, we're booked for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday if needed. Okay, that's our Community Development Fund Committee. I don't think there's anything there. Aqua Client Advisory, nothing there. Correspondence, North Middlesex Distribution System Annual Drinking Report. Aqua's not coming tonight, but the report is there. Is there questions that we need to get answered for, or are we? Not at this time? Okay, we have a motion to accept this report. Councilor Daigle, Deputy Mayor Hodgins, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. The City of Clarence, Rockland National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. Receive and file. And the Town of Plimpton, Wyoming, Water and Wastewater System Affordability. Councilor Irwin?
I'd like council to support this motion, this letter going forward, Your Worship.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Nerda, in favor? Carried. Thank you. Other and urgent business. Brandon, I believe you have a couple of items on to start that.
Just one, Your Worship.
Okay.
So Your Worship, members of council, the Stars playoff runs typically go past our annual ice tear out date. What I am looking for is a motion from council to support the Stars again for an upcoming playoff extended run should they go past April 7th. Typically, council has always granted the ice stays in until the Stars are done. I'm just looking for affirmation for that.
Any questions on that? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councilor Nerda, seconded by Councilor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. And I had something else. Go ahead, Councilor Irwin.
Just an announcement or an invitation for council, Your Worship. The AC Dennett Dog Park in Elster Craig will have its official opening on Saturday, April 13th at 11 a.m. The Elster Craig Village Association has confirmed that the mayor will be cutting the ribbon. And there will be some light refreshments provided by the Lions Club. And hopefully you can attend the event. I have to note, I hopefully, if this will be a media event or not, and I say that because last year, Strathroy opened a dog park and got a lot of media coverage. It turned out to be a pretty big event in terms of local media and London, even CBC for some reason. So I'm not sure if that will be something similar in Elster Craig.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also see that our desk signs are not reflective of our new positions name. Can we get those changed? Says Manager of Recreation, should be Director. Thank you.
All right. Just so you know that the refreshments served at the dog park are not going to be kibbles in the water, just in case anybody's wondering. It's not kibble and water.
Your Worship, it will be hot dogs.
Wiener dogs? Okay.
And what's offered to the furry friends?
You may laugh at this, but that actually was a point of discussion at the meeting last night, and it was decided not to provide anything other than what the owners bring themselves, because a lot of dogs have allergies. I can't eat certain foods. So please do not feed stray dogs on the 13th.
Especially peanuts, because we know that's the. Okay, any other business? Other business? Counselor Daigle?
I just direct this to the director of, the signs still have not gone up for the construction on Hamilton Road for the trucks. Could we please make sure that gets taken care of?
Through the mayor, certainly we'll reach out to the developer and engineer again. Impress that upon
Okay.
them. We need those.
I think they might have been up and then they, with hydro and stuff, they were taken down. I don't. Okay, okay. Anything else on other business? No other business? All right. Deferred items. I don't think we're speaking to any of those tonight. Communication, including county council, you have the March 12th report in front of you. That is going, the budget is going for final approval back to council next week for the county budget. The recommended amount that is going, I will say now, because council has seen it there once, is just under 3%. I think it's 2.73 or 2.93. So it's come down quite a ways from what it was. Anything else for the county? No? Invitation to the Warden's Golf Tournament. It's at Fire Rock. Closed meeting. We have to go to closed meeting to receive information on the following exception. Personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Personnel matter. We have to move to close. Councilor Nerda, Councilor Daigle, all in favor?